Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Dr. Jacqueline Caston. And as always, our goal is to inspire positive change. Dr. Caston, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Thank you so very much. I'm really excited, Dr. Cross, that you decided to have me here to be able to talk on your platform and to be able to reach a different audience. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, welcome. And glad to have you here. The experiences that you have been and your tremendous commitment to serving students in particularly, and it's a pleasure to have you here. But before we get into the conversation, I would like for you to share with the listeners about yourself and some of the things that you have done, although during the conversation, we may touch on some of those things as well.
Sure thing. So I'm a native of Richmond, Virginia. That's my home. I grew up on the south side of Richmond, Virginia. I was educated, born, and raised there. It was there that I discovered that I have a love for foreign language at a young age, and pretty much for vanity. I wanted to have friends in many tongues, many nations, many tribes. So I thought the best way to do so would be to learn foreign language. So I studied Spanish in undergrad. I had the opportunity to live in Antigua, Guatemala for a year, and I studied at Obispo Marroquín, where I studied Spanish literature and culture there, and really took a look and delved into the indigenous people and the life of the indigenous women in particular. It was also there that I learned about Afro-Latinos, a group of people called Garifunas, that made me really, really love the language more, because it was like, wow, these are people who look like my family members who actually speak Spanish along with other languages as their native tongue. So that was very exciting to me. And it caused me to have this love for their culture, their faith, their religion, their style of dancing, their types of food, and their culture in particular. So I was really excited about that as well, being a language lover and a culture lover, particularly the Hispanic culture and language. Is something that I really enjoyed and really connected with when I began to learn about all of the connections that Latin America have with the diaspora of Africa, as well as here in my native country, America. So that was something that was very exciting to me, to be able to go there to study and to learn Spanish when I was 19 years old, and particularly being an inner city male from America who had never been anywhere on an airplane before. I had the opportunity to go to a foreign nation in order to learn the language. Also, I ended up having a small career, lackluster career as an educator in Richmond, Virginia. I taught in Richmond for 1 year, and then I relocated to Baltimore, Maryland 21 years ago, where I was able to teach most of my career in Baltimore City public schools. Is where I got a lot of my training and had the opportunity to meet some of the wonderful young people that I was able to encounter and here in this country, and not in this country, I'm sorry, in this city. And they were able to sort of not only me impact them, but they were able to impact me. So it was a great career that I had there as a Spanish teacher. And while I was there, I decided that I wanted to be a reading specialist, because I began to understand the importance of me even being a Spanish teacher, the importance of teaching literacy and teaching young people how to read or to be better readers within the content area, and how I could do that effectively within the Spanish classroom. Then after that, I was led back to Richmond, Virginia in 2012, where I worked as a reading specialist for 4 years at an elementary school there. And I also was promoted and became an assistant principal. And after that time, I've been an assistant principal. I was an assistant principal, I think, for 8 months. And then I received an interview in Baltimore, Maryland, at a correctional facility. So currently I'm a principal at a medium maximum security prison that's here in the state of Maryland. So I've had the opportunity to oversee one that was in the inner city, the Occupational Skill Training Center, the pre-release, the Maryland Diagnosis Center as well. So I've had a vast array of different schools that I've even encountered within correctional education. And sort of that's where I am now, with really helping people to understand the importance of the school to prison pipeline and how we must be disruptors of that through exposing people, and also for people to understand that returning citizens or people that are incarcerated should have the opportunity to be able to be educated and have opportunities to tap into different skill sets that they may not be aware that they have, that education can a lot of time cause them to have that aha moment, that moment of clarity, that moment of motivation that changes them to do something that will help to keep their feet on the street and to keep them from returning behind the fence. So now sort of my work is really trying to talk about how we can destroy the revolving door, and how we can shatter recidivism through education, and using that as a small little piece to the puzzle to helping to move inner city communities forward.
Man, that's awesome, man. That's the experience is rich, especially as you mentioned, traveling overseas, interacting with the people that speak
Yes,
differently, but you find where there were some similarities, even
exactly.
though the language was different. That's an awesome bio or experience to
Oh,
share.
something else, Doc. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yes,
cut
go
you
ahead,
off,
go ahead.
but I forgot to share that I did do a couple of years in Honduras as well. I taught at the Escuela Internacional San Pedrana. So I was able to have a shift from being a student to actually being someone who was a resident of another nation and was able to actually teach at one of the international schools in San Pedro Sula, Honduras as well. So I think that would be something that I need to point out. And I'm sorry that that slipped my mind, but I think that's important because as I begin to talk, you will begin to see sort of the global connection that I have when I talk about education and the importance of it, not just here nationally in America, but internationally and globally as well.
Man, it's really impressive. Just even when you just came back in and speaking in Spanish and stuff like that, I believe that's impressive. And not only that, because when it comes to us as Black men, there are so many limitations that have been placed on us. And just listening to your experience and where you have been and the things that you have done, you have shown to all of us, to everyone, that you don't have to be limited based on your environment or based on what society have told you or what society have said to you. So just your
Exactly.
experience can show other Black males in particularly that you don't have to be limited. Just as how
No,
you had the desire to learn a foreign language, but because you wanted to have different experiences. So you decide that, you know what, I'm going to learn a language that is not my native language. And you have
exactly.
seems to perfect it. Just the little that you have shared just in the dialogue right now. But I will say, man, that is impressive. And thanks also for your commitment to educating the young minds because it's important. And what is also impressive with your experience, you are showing them that they don't have to be limited.
No,
That's because sometimes we can tell young people you can do something, but when you have done it yourself, it makes it easier for them to believe they can do it. And that is tremendous. That is really important, especially when we're talking about creating change, especially when we're talking about creating an impact and get our young men to realize what is possible for them. So, man, that is awesome. And to kind of switch gear a bit, I'm just going to ask you, what is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
I think one is you have to have passion and you have to really believe in what it is that you're doing and understand the importance. I think for me, what has kept me so long, especially in urban environments or non-traditional environments, is that I'm a non-traditional guy myself. When I begin to think about my own personal narrative, I'm from the inner city. I'm from the South Side projects and called Blackwell in Richmond, Virginia. Like true story, but I understand the impact that education had on me in my life. I think about my mom's passion and my dad's passion to make sure that their children understood that we could have a better life than they had, and that we could utilize education as a catalyst. I wrote a chapter in a book entitled Fighting the Good Fight, and it's looking at African American narratives and perspectives of principles and leaders here in America. And I talk about the time that my mom thought in that robbery to purchase a set of Encyclopedia Britannicas. And it's actually amazing because that was in 1988. I was 10 years old and I still remember that. and have the actual receipt of that when my mom purchased those back in 1988, because even though we were in the project, she knew that the Encyclopedia Britannica could open up a world to us that we would never see. And it was the W volume, the one that had waterfalls in it. You know, TLC says don't go chasing waterfalls in one of their very popular songs, but it was Chasing Waterfalls that helped me to realize that the world that I lived in was much bigger than my hood, because there was no, or my neighborhood, sorry, that's my vernacular slipping in there. In my neighborhood, there were no waterfalls, but because of the photos and the Encyclopedia Britannica, I understood that the world was much larger than my community. So, you know, I think it's this really having that passion, really having that perseverance, that grit and that fortitude to understand that I can have better. It may be more difficult for me, but you know, I think about all of those who've gone before us who it was difficult for. It was difficult for me to get a terminal degree, but I had to humble myself when I thought about how difficult that it must have been for Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois to get a doctorate degree from Harvard during the 1800s. So I think that those are the things that we have to remember when we're trying to make an impact, and to understand that everybody's story and everybody's narrative, everybody's testimony is different from one than another. And we have to take the time to really understand others in order to be able to help them to use education as a tool to facilitate what it is that they want to achieve in life. I think that's very important to remember that, to understand with these young people. A lot of times when I was at Frederick Douglass High School here in Baltimore City, I was able to make it because I was able to be empathetic that many of them, even though they were children, they were leading the life of an adult. They were taking care of families. They had children. So even though they were children and young people, I still had to remember or remind myself as I was teaching them or leading them that many of them have adult responsibilities. So I had to sort of take a different angle with them. I couldn't just talk at them. I had to talk with them and allow us to have a dialogue, and not for it just to be unilateral where they would do what it is that I said. Having to understand that they may come into the classroom some days where they're going to be tired. They may be hungry. They may have stayed up all night because incidents were happening within the household. They may have had parents who were drug addicted and who were not there, so they had to protect and look after siblings. So I had to take that into consideration before I really went overboard because they didn't have a pencil, or because they didn't have paper, or because their head was on the desk and they were sleeping. I had to take the time to build rapport with them and to understand their circumstances and to begin to handle them accordingly.
That is important. What you just shared, especially the last part of what you shared when you're dealing with the students, is to be culturally responsive and having that cultural knowledge of those you are serving. And not all educators are culturally competent to understand their students. And you need to be culturally competent to be an effective teacher, because as you mentioned, you know that some of the students have different responsibilities and that they may not have certain things available to them.
Exactly.
And going to the classroom with that perspective or that mindset, it will make it easier to connect with the students that you are entrusted to serve. But as you mentioned,
Exactly.
yes, as you mentioned, with to make a positive impact, which you shared begins with believing that you can believe in yourself and have a passion for whatever you decide to do, which are both important when it comes to making a positive impact. And that's
Exactly.
something that we have to focus on, especially when we are thinking about moving the needle forward. But I want to go back a little bit to ask you, like, because you mentioned that you realize that it must have been harder for those before you, like W.E. Du Bois, to get their degree. But when you
Exactly.
started your journey, how was it? Was it challenging for you? Did you ever feel like, man, you know what? This is hard. How was that journey for you?
So I have to say, for me, it started again back in high school. I thought that being popular and being the cool guy who dressed well, who could be a chameleon and get along with many different groups. I didn't get accepted into any college that I applied to, so I had to start at community college. So that was a very disappointing time in my life. But again, perseverance. I knew that I wanted to be educated. I knew that education would be the conduit to help me to end the cycle of poverty. So I was able to attend a community college, and it was there that I learned the organizational structure of how college actually works, how classes and the setup of scheduling actually work. I didn't do well in some classes, so it was there that I had to learn to go and get tutored, and had to learn how to go to the writing center, and had to learn how to utilize the resources that were available for me. Then transitioning to Virginia Commonwealth University, and again, we're talking about a very liberal and majority white institution because it's the PWI, which is a predominantly white institution. So learning how to be culturally competent within that and not lose myself as to who Jack Ken was, and we're speaking of coming from the community college, transitioning into a baccalaureate program, really not feeling that I was adequate enough sometimes because community college was the 13th grade. So I'm just finishing, the 13th grade. Do I have what it takes? When I think about that orientation, when they tell you to look to the left and to look to the right, and they say that one of you won't be here at the end of the semester. But I had that assurance, even though I was afraid that that wasn't going to be me, I would be here. And I always would tell the person, oh, it's not me, so it must be you that they're talking about. But wondering if I had the faculties to be able to do so, even to learn a foreign language. You're talking about going into another country where you're studying and no one speaks English. You're in the university. So not only am I having to use Spanish, but I'm having to utilize academic language, scholarly language, which was different from how you would speak in the streets. It's the same from language to language. How certain groups of people speaks different than others. So having to learn and expand my vocabulary academically in Spanish, that was very challenging for me and frustrating at times. I wanted to quit because there would be times, if I can be honest, when people would talk to me and I didn't understand what was being said. I think about the time when I first got to Guatemala. I could speak Spanish well, but my comprehension wasn't good. I could ask you how to get to the bathroom and all about your family, but when you responded, I would be lost. And those were some frustrating moments because I was hundreds of miles away from home. I was there in a program alone and by myself, but I was able to meet people who wanted to help me, to mentor me, to help me get through these experiences, which I think is important. And then transitioning into the master's degree program at Johns Hopkins, which was, even though it was another predominantly white institution, we have to understand that no one race is a monolith. So I went from Virginia Commonwealth University, which was a very liberal way of thinking and ideology, to a very conservative sort of environment at Johns Hopkins, which I had to become accustomed to in order to navigate the school there, which was very difficult for me, particularly as a Black male student there, which was baffling to me because I've been able to be in many mixed environments and to do well. I mean, I was able to do well grade wise, but when we look at how I was socially, it was very awkward. I felt isolated a lot, which was difficult for me as well. But I was able to get through that as well. Again, then transitioning to the doctoral program, you have to remember I tried to get in a program for maybe 5 or 6 years, and I was applying to multiple schools in the nation, and I wasn't getting accepted anywhere, especially to the PWIs that I was applying for. And I was very grateful. Many people ask the question, are historically Black colleges and universities still needed? And at one point in time, I was one of the people going around saying, no, we can assimilate, we can do well at these PWIs. But it was at that point where I hit a roadblock here in America, and no one was picking me up. Not Vanderbilt, not Temple. I applied to NYU. I applied to Harvard. I applied to Yale. I applied to so many different schools, but none of them were either a good fit for me or they didn't want me and I wanted them. And eventually Morgan State ended up picking me up for me to be able to finish the terminal degree and to finish my dream of being able to be called Dr. Caston. But even that was tough and frustrating because it's like, oh my goodness, I have to write this dissertation. And by this time in the game, I knew classes. I can get through a class. Classes are easy for me. I was able to learn that, how to be a good student at the master's degree level. So I was ready. I was ready for that. I know how to navigate that. But can I write original research? You know what I'm saying? What does that look like? And how do you navigate that? And there was times I wanted to quit. I mean, because I was in an accelerated program, I'll speak truthfully with you, that was supposed to take 3 years. And I started in 2013 and I ended up graduating in 2020. So you do the math. I've never been a numbers type of guy. So many times there, I was like, maybe I should just give up. Maybe I'll just be ABD. Maybe this isn't for me. I ended up having a hiccup with a teacher in a class that just, they only offered the class once a year, and me and the professor just didn't see eye to eye. It was looking like I was not going to be able to make it out of there, but I was able to, again, that fortitude, that grit, that tenacity to be able to finish what it is that no weapon that was formed against me I was going to have. I couldn't allow it to prosper because I knew that it wouldn't, even though it didn't feel good at times. As long as I persevered and kept my hand to the plow, I would be able to obtain my goal. And in 2020, I was able to do so at the illustrious Morgan State University here in Baltimore, Maryland.
Man, that's a great story, and it shows perseverance. It shows dedication. Although all those things comes with challenge, and as you mentioned, perseverance is one of the things that, when it comes to attaining goals, you have to be able to persevere. And that leads me to
You
this
do.
question: what advice do you have for the men listening and how they can play a role in creating positive change?
So I think for men, we have to learn to encourage one another more, and we have to learn to accept it. We're great with giving the negative feedback, but also be able to speak life into one another and edify one another. I think it's good when you see that a brother is doing something that's good and something that's well. Speak to that, and we have to get away from a society where, because we're edifying one another and we're being kind to one another, that we're being questioned. You know what I'm saying? We question someone's machismo, they say in Spanish, or we begin to question someone's ideologies or someone's sexuality because we're edifying and because we're uplifting one another. We have to begin to move from having a negative mindset of critiquing people when we see that people are pushing hard one for another and uplifting and treating one another kind. I think we have to be open for mentorship. We have to be open to mentor. We have to be able to give, and we have to be able to receive that, and that's in every aspect. If we give knowledge, we have to be able to receive knowledge. If we give help and assistance, we have to be able to receive that. Being able to speak well of one another, even when we're not in the room. When we know that we've encountered someone who does something well, don't be ashamed to say, "Hey, I know Dr. Cross. This is what he's doing. He wants to impact Black men around the nation." Don't be afraid to speak up when we know that someone is looking for someone who has the area of expertise that you have. That's how we get ahead. We have to begin to network and to begin to help one another, to begin to be loyal one to another. They say each one reach one and each one teach one, and for never look down on a brother unless you're helping to pull them up. So every opportunity that we have to pull someone up, to bring someone in, to sit someone at the table who is worthy enough to be at the table, because we already know, as Black men in America, we don't just get to show up because we are connected to someone. We have to have the knowledge, we have to have the look, we have to have the sound, we have to have many things just to get to the table sometimes, and even get to the table and we're still shunned and looked upon as maleficent. I guess that's a word. So we have to remember that. So when we have the opportunity to invite others in, we have to be able to do so, and to not be afraid to do so, because we have to begin to edify and to lift one another up. So that would be the advice that I would give. Continue to be kind, be who you are, continue to dominate, stay relevant of the research, stay relevant of who's who amongst the things that you want to do. Don't be ashamed to ask people, and understand that when you ask, it doesn't always mean that people are going to say yes either. People are still going to tell you for simple things. Just here I was at a conference in Louisiana and met some wonderful people, and I just asked for simple, what I thought was simple endorsement from some of the work that I did down there, and it hadn't happened. They cut off the conversation from just simply asking from an endorsement. But nevertheless, I'm still going to push forward. I'm still going to ask for what it is that I believe I need, and knowing that eventually I may get 10 no's, but that one yes will be the one that will be able to open up many of doors for me to be able to be in rooms that normally would have been out of reach for myself due to my ignorance and my lack of knowledge of those platforms. So that
Yes.
would be just some small advice I would give to the brothers who are listening.
Well, those are really sound advice from us edifying each other, from us uplifting each other, from us being mentors and be willing to be mentored by others. As you mentioned, man, we don't know everything. And that's something that I learned real quick once I started my journey. And even coming from Jamaica to here, there were certain things that I wasn't paying attention to growing up. So whenever I come across someone that I believe is smarter than me, man, I'm sitting and I'm listening. And I will even
Exactly.
ask for corrections because I realize that for me to become better, asking for help is something that I have to get comfortable with. Although sometimes it's still not the most comfortable thing to do. But as Black men, that's one category we are put in. We don't ask for help. And as you mentioned, we have to be willing to ask for help. We have to be willing to be
Be
mentors.
rejected.
Yes, and be rejected as
Mhm.
well, and realize that a no doesn't mean you should stop. You may have to ask 10 times before you get one yes. So I believe what you said
Exactly.
when it comes to creating positive change, those are some sound advice that are good reminders to all of us to keep pressing forward, to ask for help when we need it, and to give help and uplift and work with others because we may not get into rooms if we don't have people that we're connected to. And as you mentioned,
Exactly.
where we have to be perfect almost in every areas, in some circumstances, to get the opportunity or that we want, just because of who we are and because we are Black, especially, which it is we are so should be past those limitations. But unfortunately, we still have to deal with some of those challenges in today's society. So, but man, I think what you shared in regards to positive change, those are great reminders to all of us. Unless if you are you going to expound on that? But if not, I'll just go into my next question.
Well, I did want to add to something that you said. I do want to think that a lot of times we look at people as being smarter than us, but one thing that I have realized that have helped me to be successful is to realize that everybody has an area of expertise. Your area of expertise may not be mine. And I think that we have to take the time to sit and understand that even someone who is not as eloquent as you and I, it could be a guy who, because of plumbing or how to fix a car, you have an area of expertise that is not my area, and I will have to sit and listen to you in order to learn from you. I think about my hair. In order to keep it natural, I have to go to the cosmetologist and I have to or a loctician in order to help me to understand how to take better care of my scalp. Now, when it comes to education and those type of things, that's my area of expertise. So I think that we have to tap into people's area of expertise and the knowledge that everyone has. I think about me being in the prison a lot, and I'm often amazed at the level of intelligence and intellect that these men who I encounter, and some of them have done some heinous things, but I'm often amazed and taken aback at the way they are able to problem solve, the way they're able to come up with wonderful ideas and ways in order to execute them to make them happen, how ingenuitous they are when it comes to creating things and making things, like making something out of nothing. They're able to make that happen. And I think that we have to remember that everyone has something to offer. Everyone has something that they can give. Again, everyone will not be medical doctors. Everyone will not be PhD and EDDs and JDs. We have to have people who still will be occupational and work on cars and help us with diesel fuel and et cetera, et cetera. And every individual matters in regards to what it is that they want to do and what it is that they have that they can offer. And we have to understand that when we deal with people, and not to see any big eyes and little U's. We have to begin to understand like everybody has something important that they can offer.
That's a great perspective. And being that you mentioned that you're in the prison and you come across individuals who are smart and but end
All
up
the time.
behind bars and get involved in the justice system on the wrong side. So I want to ask this question and see how you can
So
tie that in. How can we, as Black men, help to change the narrative today? But before you even go into, I know you're in Maryland, and I
I
know
am
the recent governor, Westmore.
Westmore.
Yes, he wrote the book, The Other Westmore, and just you sharing that you come across individuals who are smart, who are intelligent, who can problem solve, but yet they get involved in the justice system on the wrong side.
Oh,
Once when you're answering the change in the narrative, how can we do that? If you could incorporate some of that and how we may be able to help some of the young men not to get to that level or to be incarcerated.
well, the main thing that they constantly say is that they never had instructors who made them feel like they could learn. They didn't pay enough attention to them. Some of them even would speak of school being boring, so it wasn't engaging. It's you do what it is that I say do, or you're out of here. So people didn't know how to actively and authentically engage them as students to make them realize, oh wow, I can do this. Many of them weren't built up to feel successful. So my thing now, I think about even my experiences. So I just recently was hired as an adjunct professor to teach writing at Morgan State, and many of them haven't been made to feel successful from the beginning. And I think about sharing with some of my friends who's like, oh, you should be so tough in the beginning, and share with them they all start with zeros and they have to make their way up to an A. And I think that that's a backwards way of thinking to me. Most of us are already have a defeatist attitude in school. We're already nervous and don't think that we're adequate enough to be there. So why would I want to give them that type of anxiety when I look at my point of view, where actually you have a 100 and you have an A? Because that was the main question most of them wanted to know in the beginning. Dr. Caston, is your class going to be hard? I said, well, to me, you all have a 100A now. Are you going to be able to keep it? So I think that we have to set people up to feel successful. Even with that experience for me, I'm making sure in the beginning, I'm building up a lot of little small things and small grades. So in the end, it can create a cushion for them when they have to turn in their research papers, which are traditionally have been tougher for people to learn to write. So I share with them in the beginning, I'm setting you up. Don't be fooled and baffled either, because we have a lot of these fluff grades, but this is to help to lessen the blow in the end, just in case, so that you still can know that I'm attempting to set you up to be successful. I want each of you, because I remember being in your seat, and I wanted people to help me to feel successful. I didn't want to feel defeated. So I think that it's important for us to set people up for success, help them out, give them encouraging words. And even when they do things that are wrong, instead of talking down, have those conversations and dialogue and try to find out why they're exhibiting the behaviors that they have. I think of my first day working in the prison, I was cussed out by one of the men, and he called me everything but what my parents named me, Jackin Tyree Caston. I promise you. And traditionally, most people, the teachers were looking to see how I was going to handle this guy. He just cussed me out. And of course, one of the teachers triggered him in order for him to react like that, because I knew I hadn't done anything to him for him to cuss me out. So I really had to take the time to sit back and think about it. And it was then that I realized, oh, this brother don't have the vocabulary to be able to eloquently articulate to me why he's feeling the way that he's feeling. But as I was able to walk him through that, I was able to find out that he felt that his teacher was condescending, and she talked down to him as if he was an idiot, and he couldn't tell that she didn't like him, and she was always trying to do things to make him upset so she didn't have to teach him. But he didn't have the vocabulary to be able to state that. He didn't know how to say she's sarcastic and she talked to me in a very condescending tone. All he knew was, Dr. Casson, this bitch is, as he described her, is getting on my nerves. So, and then he jumped in, and I was MFers and I was bitchs and I was all of these things, but I knew that it had nothing to do with me, and I didn't carry it with that. And actually, that young man actually became one of the students who went on to be very successful. in regards to obtaining his GED, in regards to obtaining certain credentials and things that could help him once he got out. And gratefully to this day, we haven't seen him back in the system since he's gotten out. And also, I think that we have to, take the time to really listen. Don't be so emotional, even though we have to operate in our emotions. And a lot of times we're going to feel some type of way, but I had to learn from a good friend of mine when I was in college, who's always said, that stinging that you're feeling in your chest. And I would say, yes. My friend Monet would say, that's just your pride. So we have to lay aside that pride sometime in order to, especially if we are really true to the cause of helping people to become better, because sometimes your pride is going to be, someone will sting your pride. And we have to make sure that we don't become retaliatory, and we have to make sure that we don't become the oppressors who we are always fighting against and trying to shake off of our own shoulders. If you're not careful, you'll find yourself in that cycle of oppressing others who don't have the authoritarian power that you may possess and may have. So we have to be careful with that, and teaching people. And really part of the reason a lot of teachers, just being realistic, and people who deal with young people are not successful with them. The reason I was able to be successful at what they consider to be one of the wildest school in Baltimore, Maryland, was because when my students came to me, once I had a rapport with them, I taught them, and we had structure. And every time that they came into my Spanish class or into my reading course, I'm going to be prepared and ready for them. And I'm going to have work so that that smart student who would be the one who would get in trouble and end up being a nemesis, and end up doing things that are mischievous because they're bored or they have nothing to do. No, you're not going to have time to do that, because I'm going to be prepared for each student, from the ones who are gifted and talented and finish their work fast to the ones who work like a snail. And I have to allow them extra time, because it's the important thing is to make sure that everybody is included, and that everyone feels that their level of academic prowess is being met, and no one truly is being left behind.
That's right.
As cliche as that may sound.
Well, that's important. You have to let students feel as if they matter. That's very, very important. And especially when you're in the classroom, because some students are going to come, as you mentioned, that they may already think they don't matter. And if you make them feel like they don't, which they kind of have that feeling already, they may not do what they're supposed to do to advance.
Exactly.
So I think that is important. You shared your experience in the classroom. But when it comes to changing the narrative, what can Black men do to help change the narrative if they're not in the classroom?
So, I mean, again, if they're not in the classroom, those things still are outside of the classroom as well. You have to set people up for success. If you have something that you can lend to them as a helping hand, whether it be words of advice, whether it be knowing about programs that they can be in, if they apply for different things, that they possibly sponsor some of these young people or people to be in things, invite them to be in environments where they can see people that are different. Because a lot of times you become your environment because you don't know that there's different things out there. So if you know that there's things and ways that you can offer exposure to people, then you should give them that opportunity. If you have the means to be a blessing to someone, to sponsor someone, an application fee for someone to be in Toastmasters so they can learn how to speak in public, or to help someone when they study abroad. I think about all of the churches and things that came together when I went to study abroad and raise money so that I could live over there and just free for a year. That those were people from outside of the classroom, but I think those same techniques that are used by me as a teacher, they're effective inside or outside of the classroom, in the prison or beyond the prison walls. I think that those things can be utilized. Take the time to, if you have family members or friends who don't have a Black male role model, take the time to be that role model. Take the time to
Right.
be that listening ear for them. Don't push anything on them, but let them know that you're there to motivate them, that you're there to sort of support them and to help them in any of their endeavors. I just talked to one of my former students the other day, and he was sharing, I was feeling diabolical and I wanted to do something crazy. They call me Profe. I said, well, I wouldn't want you to do anything diabolical, because if something was to happen to you or you were to become incarcerated, I would be bothered. And just me simply saying that to him made him say, wow, He said, I didn't think anyone really cared.
Oh,
He
wow.
said, but now I'll be more prone to think about my actions. So that didn't cost me anything. I just gave him a true reaction. I don't want you to go to jail, brother. Like you were one of the students at Douglas who was able to embrace me, never disrespected me, were always thorough. So you shouldn't allow anyone to push you to that. And I really would feel some type of way if you were to harm someone or someone was to harm you, you know? Because I want to see you be successful. I want to see you do well. You are doing well. So don't allow anyone to knock you off of your square because of something that can be handled in numerous ways that won't allow cause for you to do something that's detrimental to your life and your lifestyle as a free citizen.
Well, as you said, as the student said to you, I didn't know that anyone cared. And it's just by you giving some advice, positive feedback, and
Yes.
reassuring the student that they can do something different from what they're thinking about doing. And I think that's beneficial to all of us here, everyone that's listening. Sometimes all it takes to change the mind of someone who may choose to do something that will not be beneficial is to provide some form of encouragement and reassurance to let them know that they are valued and needed in this life and that someone care about them. And that leads
And that's
me
it.
to go ahead.
Like I
No.
said, and that's important. That's really important. And it doesn't cause, I think all the time of how you can change someone's day from just smiling sometimes. You know, we don't smile as much anymore. We don't give an encouraging word. We don't embrace one another. We don't dap each other up. As we say in the hood, you know, give one another dap or five just to encourage, because you know, if you're having a bad day, we never know what other individuals are going through. And just that one thing can be enough to push someone either over the edge or to pull them back. You know, so we have to, what conduit what are we trying to be a conduit of? Are we trying to give them that push to send them over the top? Or are we trying to give them that pull that will bring them back over and to understand it's not as bad as it actually seems, you know? And I think that we have to remember that, even with being all this car rage and everyone is upset and angry and want to cuss and fuss and fight. But I think I've read a book one time that says a kind word can soothe the fire of anger. So we have to remember that sometimes, you know, just a kind gesture, you know, paying it forward, as a lot of people like to say. When you're moved to do something nice for someone, just do it. You don't know why you're being compelled. You don't know why you're being moved to do so, and how you being obedient to whatever that is that's leading you to do so may change the entire pathway of the person who has the opportunity to encounter you in that moment.
And I think that is important. And a great perspective always show kindness, especially whenever we can, because you meet someone, you never know what they're going through.
You
As you
don't.
mentioned, that what you said, if it's angry or from a place of anger, you may end up causing that person to do things that may be detrimental to that person.
Exactly.
But a kind word,
Or to
that's right.
yourself. You don't want others to get harmed, but I most definitely don't want Jacken to be harmed.
That's right. Which is really important. So my next question is, I know you have been teaching for over 20 years. I know you have traveled to different country. You have decided to pursue education in a foreign language. So my question to you is, what or who has influenced or inspired you to pursue the path that you're on?
Outside of the very cliche, my parents, and which they did, and my great grandfather, who I had the opportunity to know up until 2007, actually when I was living in Honduras, he joined the cloud of witnesses. But outside of them and my ancestors, I really would have to say, believe it or not, it was watching Lean on Me as a kid. I wanted to be Joe Clark. I
Wow.
wanted to be a principal. I wanted to hear them say they used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman. That just motivated me so much. You know, go ahead and jump, boy. You smoke crack, don't you? Go ahead and jump. So that just really inspired me to want to be a principal. And I also say, I had some really, really dope teachers coming through. Think about my Spanish teachers. Shout out to Verona High School, class of 1996. I had some really dope Spanish teachers who really taught me and really made me have a love for the language. That told me that I could do it, and they were really amazed at me and my ability to be able to speak Spanish even when I was in high school, because it was such a high interest area for me. I really blossomed, and I was able to speak it really well. I was able to get rid of my American accent at a very young age because I'm able to mimic and emulate very well. So if I listen to it and I hear it, I can mimic it. Almost any accent that I hear, I practice it when people aren't around because I like the way it sounds. You say you're from Jamaica, you ought to hear me give a good Jamaican accent. It's different from my Trinidadian accent. So I was able to be able to do so. And they really encouraged me. I thought when I was in high school, I wanted to be a caterer. I think of teachers like Ms. Mary Dick, who was my catering teacher, who worked us so much and so hard. It made me realize, no, catering isn't going to be the job for me. I think I better go ahead and persevere with Spanish, because you really work when you're a caterer, and especially when you're a high-end caterer and you want to do it well. So my teachers definitely encouraged me. I'm really thankful for that. Again, the Encyclopedia Britannica, as a kid, just reading that on my own recognizance, when I would be bored around the house needing something to do, I would just pick it up and read it. I still actually have that W volume that sits in my home right now as a reminder of why it is and who it is and what it was that inspired me to do what it is that I'm doing, honestly.
Man, that's awesome. I think Lena and me have inspired a whole lot of people. No, because Joe Clark really loved those kids.
He
Although
did.
his method at some point seems as if it was off, but he realized where he was and realized,
Yeah.
how to make the connection with these students. You have to, let them know that what's going on outside. And, if you're going to
Yes.
be here, these are things that you have to do. Although sometimes, even the teachers got mad, but
Yes, they
when
did.
you are, about creating change, everyone will not see your vision. Everyone will not be in agreement with you. And sometimes, you have to do a little bit extra, not because it's something that you really want to do, but, if you walk the same lines as everyone else, people may sometimes don't take you seriously because you're doing it just as how it has been done all this time. So, with you
Exactly.
sharing, Lean and me, and, that was one of your first inspiration. But, your teachers played a critical role in inspiring you, outside of your parents, which is normally typical. But when you have teachers that are encouraging, that sees you for what you can become, man, great things can happen. And it's important that teachers really encourage their students. And sometimes, even when they're not being the best student, maybe
Mhm.
that's even when the encouragement is even more important.
Mhm.
So I know you being inspired and you being dedicated to serving youth, especially, have started some time ago. Once you decided that that's something that you want to do. So I'll go into my next question, or unless you have something
Okay.
else to share. But my next question to you is, what is your perspective on the current climate of Black men in society today?
Wow. A lot of times I feel like it's a ploy to get rid of us or to make us feel that we're less than. I often worry about it because a lot of times, particularly where I work, let's just be realistic, 89% of the clientele that's incarcerated look like my cousins, my uncles, my father, my brothers. So it makes me really wonder, is this something that is systematic, through through generational poverty? Is this something that is systematic through the government? Is this just that, or are these just a group of people who are just like godless, no conscience, no type of id and ego? What is it? And I often worry, when I begin to look at numbers, like the women are trailing us when it comes to education. They're trailing us when it comes to level of financial stability, social economical status. It makes me wonder what's happening, what's going on. Why aren't there more Black men getting education and seeking out and receiving top positions and top titles, whether it be within education or whether it be in business? What's going on? Makes me think of Marvin Gaye's song, what's going on? It's still relevant even in 2023. But I would like to think that it's getting better because we're having conversations like this. We're being more open, where we're trying to be transparent in order to each one reach one and to save and to help one another. I think that we have to really get on our grind in order to really help young Black men, young boys, in order not to fall victim and prey of the revolving door of in and out of prison, because it's easy to get in that revolving door and get caught up, but it's very difficult to get out. People are more willing to hire, people who have large gaps in their employment, people who just bounce from job to job versus someone who has a felony. So we have to really wonder, why is the system, again, we're 13% of the American population, but make up over 50% of those who are incarcerated. What's really happening? Is that by happenstance, or is that by design? Those things that make you go, I think that we have to be conscientious of that and asking those questions, like the question that you're having. I really don't have the answer. It just makes me have so many more questions myself. Like what's really going on?
Well, as you shared, sometimes it does feels like that, like the system is set up against you. But on the other hand, you sometimes have to say some people will have a more difficult time because of
Sure.
where they start their journey, or because they didn't have someone there to encourage them. As you mentioned, that you're working with some of these young men inside the prison that are very intelligent, are very good at problem solving, but
Yes.
they didn't get an opportunity. And don't want to say someone should wait for someone to give them an opportunity. But what I would suggest or say, being that we're here, is that we who are being successful or achieving our goals, now is our responsibility. We have an obligation to help those who are coming behind us. As you have mentioned, we have to lead the way. We have to be the role models. We have to help them see beyond what is socially constructed that they may get caught up in. And so it's on us to make sure we do our due diligence and helping the next generation to see what's possible through us. And I think once we can make that commitment, we will start to see more changes. But as you mentioned, where the females, the women, they are leading us in many areas. I was teaching a class some time ago, and one of the topic was overburdened women and misplaced men, where Black men weren't able to get some of the opportunities to work as they used to, because those jobs are now given to Black women per se. And men now start to feel inadequate because they're not able to work. And so it really fall back into, as you mentioned, it, wonder if it is, because of the social construction that causes Black men to be in the situation they are in, or what we're in, because it's a collective. We may be doing what we want to do, but there are Black men out there not getting the opportunity that they want. And it's something to really think about, but I believe we have to do our part in leading the way to making a difference so the next generation can see through us what is possible and where we make sure we open doors for the next generation as well.
Exactly.
So my next question, and it kind of ties close to what is your perspective on the current climate? And it is, what change do you want to see in general amongst Black men? And I know you may have mentioned it earlier when you talk about working
Sure.
together, and but just to talk again or share again or reinforce what you have said, the change that you would want to see in general amongst Black men.
Particularly, I guess this time I'll answer in regards to those who are incarcerated. Really want to see those who get out, stay out, and try to do better. Utilize the resource of education to help them to be. And when I say education, I'm not necessarily talking about college, but it could be rehab. It could be how to be a better parent. It could be how to become a better communicator. It could be an occupational skill or training. It could be the collegiate level. It could be college, because some of them are genius like that. But you need to just constantly be educating yourself, becoming knowledgeable of the things that are out there. So I think that we need to begin to value education a little bit more. We need to help people to see the importance of it, that help them be able to see the worth of it. Because nowadays, I think I just saw one of my young cousins with a rap line that says, "Many of you have degrees, but you still not on the same level as me," or something like that. It was very catchy, but it was like, oh wow, he's basically saying your degrees are was a waste of time. Your education mean nothing because I'm able to sit here with stacks of money up against my ear, and all you have is this piece of paper. So I think that we have to really begin to push the importance of education and helping people to understand what it means to be educated, that it doesn't mean that you're trying to be bougie or you're trying to be better than, not even that you're going to college, like I said, but it just means that you're having conversations that's more than you just talking about fighting and getting high and getting inebriated consistently. And I think that we have to begin to expound our minds. So we're talking and we're learning politically, we're learning socially, we're learning engineering and math and mathematics. All of those type of things are important. So I think that we really need to hone in on, again, financial literacy. Again, that's something we need to learn about, how to collectively, how our collective worth means more, how to begin to pool our money together, how to make our money make sense and make our money work for us, understanding that it's no get rich quick anything. Like with anything, it takes time and it's a process that has to happen in order for you to meet your end goal.
Man, those are some valid points from the inmates when they get out, not to do everything in their power to stay out and to take advantage of the resources available, and what
Yes.
we need to do to keep moving the needle forward. But as you mentioned, the value of education and what the rap artists have mentioned about him being successful and with someone with a degree, that they're not on the same level. If that person, I believe, is knowledgeable enough and know where we are or where we're coming from, that would not be a line in the song. And it shouldn't really been a line in the song.
Good.
You can say a lot more things, but to come from where we're coming from, where to learn wasn't even a thing, where we have been shut out from opportunities.
And that's so sad. And that saddens me because, again, I'm a traditionalist, so I like to think about the days of old, particularly from what I've learned from researching and from reading. When I think about the time where you could die from being educated, when if it was found out that you could read or you could write, you risk being hung and becoming strange fruit. As to where now you folk don't want to learn to be a better reader or a better writer because it takes too much. We don't want to learn to do mathematics. We don't want to learn of those things because it seems like there's no worth, there's no return from this investment for me putting in this time. Me to be able to read and comprehend, what sense does that make? Why do I need that if I can go viral and become famous and I can work to be rich? You don't have to be able to necessarily be the most educated in order to do that. So when that paradigm shift happened, it's like, where do we go? Where do we go wrong? Where did that, I'm sorry, where did that shift actually happen? Where we began to devalue the ability to be educated, to be able to speak with knowledge when I say educated. And what's even more frightening is that now you don't need an Encyclopedia Britannica. You have the World Wide Web right in the palm of your hand. And we won't take the time to research. We won't take the time to read outside of what we scroll on social media platforms.
Well, man, yeah, we have access to the knowledge now. And it's just sad that it has to be like that, where they discredit the education or the value of education. But as you may have seen, where individuals are paid to act a fool, and that becomes like a more influential part of our existence, where that is seen more than something educational. So that's where the challenge comes in, and that's where we have to, really up our game in to make sure we are putting out the positive as much as we possibly can in help to changing the narrative. But my next question to you is, what was a pivotal moment in your life?
A pivotal moment in my life. Wow. I would have to say, I think, believe it or not, I was 11 years old, and I was getting off the school bus, my friends and I witnessed someone lose their life due
Wow,
to gun violence.
wow.
And it was at that moment that I realized, like, where I live, as much as I loved it and I enjoyed the community kickball and the recreational centers and the cookouts and barbecuing on the grill and everything, it was a really dangerous and unsafe place for my family, for my mom, for my sisters, for myself. It made me really realize at that point in my life that I had to do whatever it was going to take so that Jaquin, wouldn't have to repeat that cycle. I wanted to be able to make enough to live in a safe place, a place where I didn't have to worry about coming off of the bus and almost losing my life due to and you'll be amazed how close I actually came to this before divine intervention, I believe, sort of happened that helped me to realize what was happening. Because again, I was pretty much, even though we were in the projects and we were impoverished, my mom was a lioness like none other. She protected her cubs as much as she could. So I was green to a lot of things. So I didn't even realize kind of what was happening until like a light bulb just clicked in my head. Like, wow, they're out here, they're shooting, someone is dropped, someone's dead. So that helped me to really realize that I had to figure out a way in order to escape that. You know what I'm saying? I knew our occupation wasn't for me. I couldn't work on, my grandmother always used to say, you have to go to college, man, and learn something, get some in your head, because you have soft hands. I don't know how you gonna eat, baby. So I realized at that moment, like regardless of what it was going to take, I was going to have to see it through to the end I wanted to be able to buy my house in a safe place and in a safe space. And I'm grateful because of that pivotal moment, I was able to do so. I mean, I live in Baltimore City. I have a fairly decent home where I feel safe, which is the most important. So I'm grateful for that, and to change my way of thinking for the rest of my life. It made me so grateful to my mom, because the individual who actually died wasn't who they were trying to actually get. When she used to always tell me, be careful of who you hang around, because sometimes the consequences will fall back on you. And it was at that moment I was grateful to my mom, and I was saying, wow, I always want to make sure that I'm hanging around people who are on the up and up, people who are, even though they may make mistakes, it's not, they're not chasing after doing the wrong thing. They're at least trying to make the attempt to climb this ladder of life and go higher and higher with each round that we encounter. So I became very thankful even to listening to my mom and understanding that she knows what it is that she's talking about. So to take those nuggets of advice that those and you utilize them and keep them close to heart when making decisions on I guess as Robert Frost would say, when I come to the two roads that diverge, be very cautious and cautious minded when making the decision to go left or to go right.
Well, one side that you had to see, but I know that's a long time ago, but parents and stuff like that sometimes have the insight on what to tell us. And it's not until we see something related to what they're saying, we really get what they are saying. And happens a lot. And
Mhm.
that can easily be seen, as a real pivotal moment, which give you
It was
that
pivotal.
insight on say, man, you know what? I'm going to choose my friends based on where I'm going, not where I am. And that is a great reminder, not only for kids, but even for adults. As I said, if you hang
Exactly.
around for people that don't want anything out of life, you're going to be number five. So if you
Exactly.
want to be successful and if you want to make an impact, hang around people who want to be successful and who want to make a positive impact. And that leads me to this question. What life lesson have you learned late in life that you believe is important and can benefit this current generation?
Always be yourself. Be authentically you, unapologetically you, the most respectful you as possible. But be who you are. You embrace those giftings. Embrace the fact that you may be different, and embrace the fact that you may be the same. That's okay. But be able to be happy in the skin that you are in. When you walk in a room and you're able to sit at these tables, people are looking for authenticity, and people want to see you being yourself. And it sounds so easy to do and it sounds so cliche, but it's actually a tough thing to do. We always want to make sure, am I saying the right thing? Am I sitting just right? Do I sound just right? Is my neck stiff enough? Maybe I should be more loose. I think ultimately, you just have to be you, because people are going to be able to see straight through you if you're a fake or a phony. So I've learned to really be Jacken, and sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it makes people feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it's very controversial. Sometimes it's just oops upside your head. That's all I know to say for that. But be yourself, and know that there will be people who are going to be attracted to that authenticity, who's going to be drawn to you. Just like there's going to be some you're going to be, you being you is going to be too much for them. And being able to understand that you being you don't mean that everybody is going to like who the authentic you is. And guess what? Tying all back into what I've been saying the whole time, rejection is okay sometimes as well. And we have to begin to learn that sometimes rejection is just God's protection that's keeping things away from us that would mean us no good if we were drawn to those things or those things were drawn to us. So be who you are. Know that everybody is not going to want to walk with you and be in the circle with you or sit at the table with you. And there should be some who you're not going to want to sit at your table. That's okay too. So you have to know that it works. There's yin, there's yang, there's positive, there's negative. Sometimes you're going to be the one who's being rejected, and think about the times when you're the one who has rejected someone. So understand that it's 360 degrees. It's all going to work itself right on out for you. So in the midst of it, you might as well go ahead and be who you are.
Well, and I think that's a great reminder. Always be yourself, and being yourself, you have to realize that not everyone is going to like you. But I always, when
Exactly.
I'm talking to my students, it's best if you like you than everybody else like you and you don't like you. It's
Yeah.
okay. Because
Yeah.
some people trying to be like who they think people are going to like, but they don't like who they're being like, which makes their life only more difficult. So
Yeah.
that's a great reminder. It's important that we are being ourselves, and we should be okay with being our authentic self. But before I ask my final question,
Okay.
where can the listeners find you and help support the great work that you're doing?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at Jack Ken Caston. You also can find me on Instagram as well. Again, it's my name, Jack Ken Caston, on all the social media platforms. I'm just me, authentically me, Jack Ken Caston. If you put that in, JA accent mark, you got to put that accent mark. My parents, we from the hood, capital Ken, and my last name, Caston. You should be able to find me on all platforms. Definitely reach out to me if I can help, to speak, to motivate, to uplift. That's what I do, get people pumped and amped and get people really thinking, team building, as well as advocacy and awareness in regards to destroying and becoming disruptors to the school, the prison pipeline, or anything based in education, bilingualism, foreign language learning, leadership. Those are my areas. So please reach out to me. I will be happy to to dialogue with and correspond with whomever. Yeah.
Okay, and I'll definitely put the link to connect with you in the
Okay.
description so they can reach out to you.
Please do.
Well, yes,
I would
definitely.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll definitely put it in the description so they can reach out to you and support the great work that you're doing. So my next question and final question is, what impact do you want to have on the world?
Wow, the impact I want to have on the world is for people to know that I was truly genuine. I want people to really begin to love education. One of my mottos is we have to learn to love to learn. I mean, really, really just trying to always be a role model, always trying to be an example, always trying to be a story or a testimony to help others to overcome. So I always want to make sure that people can look to me as a reason to do the right thing or not to even do the wrong thing, because I'm not a perfected being. And get into the whole narrative of my of how I was attitude wise and broken and all of that in my younger years. But I really want people to know that I love what it is that I do. I'm really passionate about education and teaching and learning, and that would be it.
Okay, man. Well, that's making an impact is always a great thing, and being that leader and being transparent in doing it, as you mentioned, that we all didn't get here spotless or without have to redo some of the things to achieve what we have achieved. So,
Yes.
and that's, I think, is what really makes the connection better when you connect with other people or want to share and uplift other people. Let them know that, look, where you are, I've been there. And I think sometimes that will help people to even listen to you more. So it's always great, man, to have that transparency when trying to make an impact. But with the great work you're doing, man, I thank you for being here on the Black Male
Thank
Impact.
you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And as the
Thank
conversation goes on, there will be other opportunities to come and share again with the listeners. And as always, the commitment is to inspire positive change.
Thank you so very much for having me, Dr. Cross. It has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation with you. And I look forward to us continuing the conversation and continuing the work to impact those people, not just nationally, but globally. So thank you so very much for allowing me this opportunity to speak on your platform. It's greatly appreciated.
Man, it's a pleasure. And listeners, as always, thanks for being here with us. Thanks for your commitment to helping the platform grow. And please like, share, and support the Black Male Impact any way that you can. Thanks again for being here with us on the Black Male Impact.